All right. We're going. So
We're going?
we are. So it's finally.
Finally.
Yay.
Not yet.
So, Robbie, first of all, tell me your name and when you started at St. Francis.
Okay, well, my name is Robbie Dick, and I started at St. Francis. Well, when it first started, when Frank started it, we were going to St. Paul's Methodist, and what we would do is we would go to St. Paul's, and then we would jump in the car and come out and drive out to St. Francis. And then my mother was in a nursing home, and so at that point, then, for various reasons, we decided we should start coming to St. Francis. So I think it started when, 67, something like that. So a couple years later, we came, and at that time, the church was just meeting in the house, and there weren't all those rooms where when you walk in, there was that, and those offices were all a living room, and that was where we met, in the living room. And there were, I mean, it was really crowded. We were stuffing the little kids under the chairs and stuff like that, you know, and all those things. And then when I joined, I remember somebody said to me that they felt that it was about time, that I probably needed it. But I remember that my son Dallas came with me, and the reason he came was because he didn't have to wear shoes. So people wore just the most outrageous clothes at that time, because of course we started during the 60s, and it was just absolutely wild. And then after it got really too crowded, and a lot of people don't know this, but what we did is the whole eastern part there, where the library is, and that part was a carport. And what we did is we made the carport into the sanctuary part of the church and put chairs out there. And then we were there for a while until later. Then we were able to build the center. And then that was real exciting when we built the center. And I remember...
Who were some of the early people? Was Frank Williams the minister at that point?
I beg your pardon?
Was Frank Williams the minister at that point?
Frank Williams was the minister. And what was interesting is, when you see his pictures, he was a pretty straight guy, so he admits that not only did he help make St. Francis made him, you know. So that was just kind of interesting, you know. So when we moved over to the center, I remember the first time was like on a Good Friday, just before Easter, you know. And I remember at the end of the service, everything wasn't complete over there, and the doors weren't even closed and stuff. There was this cold, cold wind came in. And it was just so strange on Good Friday and everything, you know. I can remember that very, very well. That was really exciting when we moved over there. But
who were some of the early people who were involved in the church when you were first there?
Well, some of those people don't go anymore, you know, like Sue Diffenderfer, Susan Green now. But she was very, very active, and also there's something she wrote about St. Francis, which I hope I can get a hold of, which is really, really good about the whole spirit of the times. But and then Cindy Hayden was in the choir. We had a choir there and stuff, and there were I can see them, but I can't remember all of them, you know. And of course, the famous story of the lamp falling down in there. And
were you there when that happened?
I was there when that happened.
Could you tell that story?
I can't quite remember what was going on, but then the problem was we were deciding whether or not we could make it as a church, you know. Oh, I forgot to tell you that the reason we were at that spot was because Keith Garrett's folks, and Neva and her husband lived right across the street, and what they did, no, they lived there. The office area was their house, and so then they were able to sell that to the church, to the Methodist church, because the Methodist church, of course, bought the land for us and stuff, you know. and then they moved across the street. But Neva was very important in the early days of the church. You know, there were a lot of them, you know, that were. As a matter of fact, out and back, the walkway, her kids' names were originally engraved in that. I don't think they are anymore, because I think it's been changed, but that was kind of interesting, you know. So, but it was just a lot of crazy people that were sort of there and wanted to do things differently. And of course, then Frank was moved right into the whole experience of doing things differently, you know. And of course, our songs, we had a songbook, I can't remember the name of it, but it was, I wish we still had it, and it had some very different songs in it too, you know. And so a lot of the songs we sing now are sort of typically St. Francis. What's the one we sang on Sunday?
Will the circle be unbroken?
Yeah, now that one I wrote, and it was from the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band. We've got the record in the church library, and of course I just changed the words so it would fit for St. Francis. Except it should not be "Will the circle be unbroken?" It should be "May the circle be unbroken," because that's more hopeful than "will." See, but they always put "will," so that's all right. But we had a different kind of music, a very different kind of music. As a matter of fact, that was one of the reasons that we left St. Paul's Methodist, because the music seemed so dull, you know. And we did in the services and everything, we did a lot of dancing and stuff like that, you know. Anything else?
What was it about St. Francis that drew you, or you and
Well,
Jim?
I think it was that we were willing to try different things, and we didn't just accept the way things were, you know. And yet we felt very spiritual. It isn't as though we were giving up our whole idea of spirituality. It was just that we wanted to do it in a more joyful way and in a different kind of way, you know. And I think we were able to do that when we, I remember one of the most memorable series of commentaries and stuff we had was on the female Christ. And Susie Cox was there at that time. She was the one who was what does she do?
Astrology.
When you can tell about your birthdays and stuff.
Astrology.
Astrology. She's
Yeah.
a very famous astrologist. She lived here at Damien. And anyway, she was that. But I was hoping we could get some video and stuff from that, because that was just a marvelous thing. And I think Bill Eagle talked a little bit about that one in his talk, so that would be good. But that was very helpful for me, because one of the things was then the idea of everything not being so masculine in the theology, you know. And feminist theology became very important to me, you know. And of course then Ramona started Women's Stories at that time, and we had 50, 60 women would come to our meetings. I mean, it was really wonderful. We did some marvelous things with ritual and everything, and dance and all sorts of things. That was pretty special, you know. So I was a little sorry when she left.
How would you describe the theology of St. Francis in the early days? What seemed to be the core beliefs?
Golly, that's a hard question. You know, I don't think I can really answer that. I don't. It was, you know, and it sounds like it was more of a didn't want to be something rather than wanted to be something. But I think we were a very joyful group, and also everybody was important. I mean, everybody was important, not just the pastor. Because when we had our commentaries on a Sunday morning, I mean, people would shout back answers to the pastor. And he accepted this, you know. I mean, strange things happened. And then David maybe had told you about some of them, about this one guy who came and was against what we believed in, and then and then David talked to him afterward and stuff, but it was just very free form, and everybody was important, that kind of thing, and when we had communion, we passed it around and gave communion to each other, instead of coming up front. So not a lot of that kind of formal stuff, but different kinds of ritual that seemed to have more meaning for us, and everybody could have their input and everything, which was good, We had another thing that later became really important is we had St. Francis Players, which was our theater group. And the people who were in it were not from the outside like they are in the theater group now. They were just us. And I was actually in plays, and so was Flo Connor and other people like that. And we did all kinds of plays. But then what we did also, we did skits on Sunday mornings to demonstrate certain things we were doing in our committees and stuff like that, which I wish we could do again, because that was very effective, to show that what was important about some of the things that outreach programs that we were involved in. We were involved in outreach from the very beginning, I remember Frank took us down to a bar downtown once, We wanted to get into the city and get to know what the problems were and how we could help and everything. And of course, all of that was kind of the beginning of Pima County Interfaith Council, that we were able to interact with the people in the city and with different groups. And of course, then we started, this is much later, but then when we started Unlearning Racism, because the YWCA has a really good workshop on unlearning racism. They did it out at the church for us. Well, I wasn't prejudiced, of course not. But it's just amazing when you take that workshop, how you feel like you picked up so much of this idea of that you're somehow better than they are, that sort of thing. So we learned a lot from that. And then we started working with that at St. Francis and working with unlearning racism type things, And of course, then eventually a lot of that moved into the reconciling thing and everything, which is the same thing. And I mentioned Bill Agel, because this is a funny story, I think. And Bill Agel lived here at Damien because people at Damien at that time, all except one, were from St. Francis and very active at St. Francis. As a matter of fact, on Easter Sunday morning, when you have the breakfast, we always had it down here. And Art Evans would make pancakes, I remember. Well, one time, Jim and I got up and all these people were coming down the hill and we couldn't get the coffee maker to work. And we just panicked, I remember that. But anyway, a lot of people did come for that. Anyway, Bill Agel was one of the people who lived here, and he's gay. Well, when we were talking about new people moving into Damien, and we had to decide as owners who was going to move in, there was a gay couple, a couple of guys who wanted to move in. And I, of all people, said, well, we've already got one gay person. Can you believe that? I mean, that's the kind of way, token kind of thing. Well, Bill Agel came over and talked to me and set me straight, But I remember that when we started to become a reconciling church at St. Francis, because we spent a whole year working on it before we did it, which was really, really smart, because all of us found out how we felt. None of us thought that we were in any way prejudiced, But then you could see that you were, and where we could really do a lot, if it became a reconciling church. So that was very important to me too.
So in the St. Francis theater group, was that Bill Agel was part of that? Was he?
Oh yeah, he was very much a part of that.
Who else was?
Bill Killian, and Bill Killian is another person you might want to interview at some point, because he did some tremendous plays at St. Francis, and stuff. And Flo Connor, who lived here, and she was part of that. And Brenda Crellin, there were a lot of people who were a part of that, who did amazing things and stuff, so.
Randy Harris was part of that?
Who?
Randy Harris?
Randy did a lot, and you should probably interview Randy too. And yeah, he did. As a matter of fact, that's an interesting thing, because at that time, of course, we were just taking pictures to get slides and stuff like that, you know. And so we have that slide presentation that we did for the 25th anniversary, and then Raleigh added to it. But Randy had a lot of slides, and so did I, so he got them all to me, and we managed to put them together for the 25th. And that was amazing, because Dave Hudnall was the one who did all of our video and everything at that time. And by this time, they had moved to Louisiana, and he had Parkinson's. And I called his wife and asked her if she thought he could help when we were deciding to put all these slides together. And she said, well, ask him. And of course, Jim Polka was working on it. And so he talked, all the time it was going on, they were talking back and forth on the phone, you know, which was on the email and stuff, because he sent the slides to him by email and everything. So he was very much a part of it. And then when the time came and we showed it on Sunday morning, I was down here afterward, and Art Evans came down, and he said Dave Hudnall was in church, and I went ballistic, and I thought, why wasn't he introduced? Well, it turns out that he had gone at the wrong time. He didn't know what time our celebration was, but I couldn't get David, but I got Raleigh, and Raleigh said it's okay. He had talked to him, and he told him he would get a copy of it. Well, he was still here because they were visiting family, but I only had his number in Louisiana. But then he called me, and so I said, how long are you going to be here? He's going to be here several days. So I set it up to get the center on Tuesday night, and we showed it, and he came, and we called a lot of people who were no longer coming to St. Francis, and they came. So a lot of people came, and he came with his brother-in-law and stuff, and it was so wonderful, because he and Jim would be talking about, well, this is the what I had to do on the camera to take the pictures, you know, and stuff, and that you don't even do that anymore, you know. So it was really quite fascinating. It was so wonderful that he could be there for that, because it really is a remarkable set of slides. And of course, Raleigh added to it. And some years we couldn't get, but he pretty much brought it as best he could up to date. And I don't know where he left that, but we should be aware of that. I thought we might use that. We really should use that one of these times when we have like the 40th celebration or something. Would have been nice to use it in church, you know. Huh. So.
Were there any of the particular productions that St. Francis Theater Group did that you remember?
Well, I should. I used to have a file on that, but I can't remember the names of them now. So we did a whole bunch of really good ones. Bill Eagle would know more than I would. So I should call and ask him. I'll do that.
One of the things that I remember was that on during Lent.
Was what?
During Lent each year, we'd put on
during Lent there was always something.
A production of a classic story.
That matched with whatever the Lenten theme was. Yeah, that's true. That would always be the case. Yeah. Yeah. So we should try and see if we can find that out. I don't know how much we have from the bulletins or anything like that. I'm not sure how much we have records, you know. But.
How about the services? Are there some of the particular services that stand out to you? The music or the plays or the dance or things like that?
Yeah, we used to use a dance, and I remember my mother looked at the Bible and said it was okay. She didn't find in the Bible where it said you couldn't dance, because she was still going to St. Paul's at that time. But I thought that was kind of funny. But yeah, dance was very important. You know, a lot of that was done, you know, and everything. So.
Was there anybody in particular who was doing that?
No, no, I can't remember exactly. I remember Susie Cox was involved in a lot of that too, so
Mhm.
I wonder if we can get a hold of her maybe.
I think Joan Van Dyke was too.
Oh, Joan Van Dyke, yes.
Yeah.
And oh, that was one thing I remember, and that was a bit later, but she did some wonderful things when we did, what do we do first Sunday of the month?
Communion.
When we did communion. She would do some beautiful communion services, I know, because she would go around and wave things and stuff. I can't remember exactly, but they were really beautiful, you know. And I really kind of missed that because it sort of brought us all together, you know, and made us feel like we were all one. Because, yeah. Yeah, so, yeah, we've done some real, and then Lori, you know,
Oh, right.
was in a lot of the plays that we did, you know, and they were
Doing her
a lot of
mime.
folk tales and stuff like that, you know, and they were all pretty wonderful. It would be fun if we could just get together all the ones that were done there, you know.
Uh-huh.
Maybe if we got together, we could remember all of them, you know. Would be good, yeah.
I think she was Pinocchio one year.
Yeah, right, exactly. All kinds of things, so.
You mentioned women's stories.
Oh, women's stories is really
Yeah,
important.
can you describe what that was like and what kinds of things you did?
It was ritual, see, and of course, we actually didn't do a lot of ritual, or at least we didn't think we were doing it. We may be doing it, but we didn't know it. This is the important thing. In the beginning of St. Francis, we thought, we're not going to split up into groups. Everyone's going to do things together, you know. Well, pretty soon it was pretty evident that we needed a women's group because, you know, we still were getting too much of this God, he stuff, you know. And so then when Ramona started Women's Stories, we did a lot of more things about feminine theology and that kind of thing. But the rituals we did were just amazing. One time we did a birth ritual where people were lined up and it was like you were going through the birth canal. And it was so powerful, you know, things like that. So, and it was very much ritual and concern about feminine theology, you know, that kind of thing. So it really changed my thinking on the whole thing, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Made me realize, because I've been fighting for women's rights all my life, and when I have two brothers, you know, and I always thought I could do everything they could do and probably better, you know, and so they had to deal with that. So.
One of the things that I remember from the fairly early days was a program called Core Studies. Were you involved in a Core Studies
I remember
program?
that. I don't remember too much about it. We had several different things like that, but I don't remember too much about it. A lot of whatever came out as new and stuff, we would try, you know, something like that, so. And we had some pretty amazing speakers in whose names I can no longer remember, but we've had some people who were pretty famous come and talk from time to time. That's why I would like to have more information about, like a newsletter or the Sunday bulletin about who was there and everything, you know,
Mm-hmm.
so.
Matthew Fox was one of the people, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Now, you and Jim were very involved in the citizen diplomacy.
Oh, yeah.
Can you
Citizen
explain
diplomacy.
that?
Well, what happened with that was that there was a group in the United States that decided that we should connect cities in the United States with cities in the Soviet Union because it was during the Cold War and stuff, you know, so we could get to talk to each other and stuff. So they did this by computer, if they had that at the time or whatever. And so they hooked us up with Novosibirsk. Well, Novosibirsk was a closed city, and no one could get into it. But of course, nobody knew that at the time. So what we did was, we would send all kinds of missiles to Novosibirsk, you know, and stuff. And later on, we talked to some people from that. They thought this was just crazy, you know. But anyway, finally, when we went over in the early 80s, and we couldn't go to Novosibirsk, we couldn't get in, you know. But people from there came and met us in
Oh.
another city in the Soviet Union. So that was pretty special, you know, and everything. So, yeah, that was quite something, you know. And that was one of the 15 trips I took to the Soviet Union. So what we did then is every year we would take citizen diplomacy trips over there and bring people back. Well, we brought back some of the Russian diplomats, and they came and talked to St. Francis. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
You know, colleague. And then later on, we started working on getting a sister city for Tucson, and Art Evans was involved in that too, and he and I went over with some other people and checked out the cities over there, you know. When we went to talk to this person in Moscow, you know, we said we're from Tucson. They said, oh yeah, we know about Tucson. They pull out this file about all the stuff we've been bringing them, you know. But we went to another city in the Soviet Union, which we liked, but we thought that Kazakhstan was the best place, and so Almaty was the one that we chose. And that was really important, because then later we were able to send other groups over there to Almaty and make this connection. When we went back to Moscow to talk to this guy about it, we said that I'm thinking of the other city that we had visited. We liked that, but he was concerned about it because it wasn't as important as Almaty, I think, and I thought that was kind of interesting. But anyway, then later we were able to take groups to Almaty, and several people were able to go over there, and I was hoping we could connect with the film industry over there, you know, because I did talk to some of them. I was sorry that I could never take my son Kirby over there, you know. That would have been really, really good. But those were just amazing trips, and it was citizen diplomacy, which of course Reagan gets all the praise for stopping the Cold War, but a lot of it had to do with the citizen diplomats, because they were out of San Francisco and Chicago and Tucson, basically. And we would meet people over there and bring our people over, and then they would make connections, and we always thought if the people in Congress would send their teenage kids over there, that we would stop the Cold War, you know. So it was pretty exciting. So.
What were some of the high points of your trips to the Soviet Union?
Well, I think it was just meeting the people. One time we took a group from the United Nations, Sue Ward, who was the head of the United Nations at that time here in southern Arizona. And her group, of course, they were older women. I don't know if they were as old as I am, but they were older women, you know. And some of them would not ride the escalators. They were so fast. Remember those escalators? And the young people would be turning around backwards, talking to each other, and the rest of us would be just hanging on for dear life as we go zipping down, you know. But what we did is we took them over there, and then we had friends over there by that time, and we would contact our friends and take them to visit our friends and stuff, you know, which is really something, because they made connections, you know, and everything. Yeah. One of the trips that we took with them, though, we had the Velcro String Quartet, who was pretty well known here at the time, and they went along with us, and they were young people. So we were in this hotel in Leningrad, and I remember the guy who went from the Velcro String Quartet got sick, his stomach, you know, and a couple of the women got sick. Well, that was really a bad situation, because they would send someone up to take care of him, because he was a young, good-looking guy, you know, and they wouldn't do anything with these women. And I mean, they wouldn't change their sheets or anything. They were throwing up and all this kind of stuff. So Jim and I went ballistic, you know, and we told them this was it. We were not coming back here anymore, anything else, you know. And finally we got them to do something, but But that was a real difficult experience, you know, so. And then another time when we went early on, there was somebody from Jim's department at Palo Verde, because he was a social studies teacher there, you know, he was the head of the department. And this guy would not pay attention to us. We said, now you don't change money on the streets and stuff like that.